like the pine trees lining the winding road. I've got a name, I've got a name, like the singing bird and the croaking toad. I've got a name, I've got a name.
Hi, this is Ben Hart. I'm going to talk to you today about how our brains learn, so you can learn any subject or skill in the surest, fastest way possible. The schools don't teach this. The schools teach you what to learn, not why you need to learn this subject. And the schools don't teach you how to learn in the most efficient way possible, so that you actually get it, so that what you learn sticks in your brain. Well, to learn any subject or skill, what you first need to have is a learning mindset. According to the Harvard Business Review, the most important trait in the most successful people is that they all have a learning mindset, a passion to learn new things. They read every day. They attend lectures and seminars and workshops. They are always looking to develop new skills and to master new subject areas that will help them more rapidly advance toward their goals in life. Knowledge really is power. The more you know, the more power you will have over your life. If you know the combination to Fort Knox, you can access the gold. If you knew with 100% certainty what the stock market would be doing tomorrow, you could instantly make $1 billion with that knowledge. Google has built $1 trillion company on this principle. That knowledge, that information is power. Google is trying to make all information that we know easily accessible, so that you can easily access it with a few keystrokes or a voice command to your computer device. We now live in the information age, the knowledge age. In the 19th century and before that, we lived mostly in an agrarian economy, when people lived primarily on what they produced personally from the land they lived on. If you had a bad crop, there was a good chance you would not be able to eat. You made your own soap, you built your own house. Everything was handcrafted, made individually, whether it was your saddle, your wagon, your gun, or your plow. We then evolved to an industrial economy, an age of factories and mass production, pioneered primarily by Henry Ford. During this industrial age in the 20th century, people were mainly paid for their time. You showed up at a factory, and you were paid for your 8 hours of work. You were paid for your time. Then you went home, and then you came back to do this all over again the next day. The most successful people in the 20th century were experts at managing time. They were efficiency experts. They were experts at organizing large numbers of people and leveraging their time into mass production projects. Today, the richest people, the most successful people, are paid for their knowledge, their expertise, the information they have, the skills they have. The knowledge you have is of real value, more so than ever today, and we will keep heading in this direction. Google, Microsoft, Apple, Netflix, Facebook, Amazon, Spotify are all companies built on information. Much of it information about you, information about your likes and dislikes, so they can sell you more stuff that you like. Work that is primarily human labor will be replaced by machines and robots, and that's already happening. What's needed now are people who know how to operate the machines, design the machines, program the machines, fix the machines when they break down. So that's the direction the world is heading. If you don't have this learning mindset, you will be left behind. And of course, technology is changing so fast, you have to learn new skills all the time just to keep up with it. If you learn a new skill in technology, the skill will be obsolete in a few years. So you have to constantly learn brand new skills all the time if you just want to stay in the technology game. The field of technology advances every day. I was talking with a college student the other day who was an English literature major. I was also an English literature major when I attended Dartmouth College. And he was telling me what he thinks he really wants to do is learn how to become a software coder so that he could immediately walk out of college into an $80,000 or $100,000 a year job. But he said he had never done any software coding before. He wondered if it was too late for him to learn how to do this. Now, I'm no expert at software coding either, but I did learn enough pretty quickly with a few weeks of focused learning and practice to be able to build basic websites. I'm a writer and a marketing strategist. What I do is write advertisements for a living. But I told him, my guess is, if you really put your mind to it, you could learn enough about software coding in about 6 months of diligent, focused daily work and practice to qualify you for an $80,000 a year or $100,000 a year job, if you are really committed to doing this. But you would really have to commit yourself to it. I then wanted to give him an example in my own life. I spent my high school years focused on trying to become a world-class ski racer. My goal was to be the best ski racer in the world, to win the World Cup, to win an Olympic gold medal. So for about 10 years or 11 years, from age 8 to age 19, I dedicated myself to this quest. I did not achieve my goal. I did become a top junior ski racer, but I saw that it was unlikely I would ever win the World Cup or an Olympic gold medal. I just did not have the athletic talent. So I decided to quit ski racing and focus on college. I got into Dartmouth College, and in my first couple of days at Dartmouth, they gave me a math diagnostic test. And because I did poorly on this test, they put me in a remedial math class. I had basically done no math in high school because I had been focused on ski racing. I was traveling all over the country and even the world for ski races. That was my focus during my high school years. So what happened in this remedial math class at Dartmouth is they took us all through basic math, starting with adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, all the way up through Algebra 2 in 10 weeks. I ended up getting an A in the course, proving that anyone can learn all of elementary and high school math through Algebra 2 in 10 weeks, if you really put your mind to it. Plus, I was taking 3 other courses in addition to the math class. This is also a great illustration of how much time is wasted in school. Kids should be learning all this material 10 times faster, so they can then move on to learning subjects and skills that really interest them. No wonder kids are bored out of their mind in school. So the answer is yes. With about 6 months of focused discipline work, you could learn enough software coding to walk into a job that pays you $80,000 or $100,000 per year, even if you were starting from scratch and had never done any software coding before. But you do have to know how to learn, so that you actually absorb and internalize the material and gain the skill. And let's face it, learning any difficult skill or subject is painful. So this means the first step to learning any new subject, craft, or skill is motivation. Well, the prospect of walking into a job that pays you $80,000 or $100,000 per year is pretty good motivation in this case. But how do you stay motivated day in and day out? Well, the way I have always tried to do this is to develop an actual relationship with my future self. For most of us, our future self is an abstraction, not a real person. What I do is imagine what my future self will look like. What will life be like for my future self? Will my future self thank my past self for putting in all this work to allow this great version of my future self to become a reality? Remember, your present self will quickly become your future self. Your past self will no longer exist. Who will your future self be? Will your future self be in that $80,000 per year starting salary job? Or will your future self be pretty much still where you are now, only older and running out of options, perhaps still bagging groceries at the supermarket and really getting nowhere? For me, imagining and actually having a relationship with my future self really helped keep me motivated to do the daily work required to allow a successful future self to come into being. I would actually have conversations with my future self, conversations with the version of what I wanted my future self to be. My future self then became not just an impersonal abstraction, almost a stranger, but is actually me. Hopefully, just a vastly improved version of me. Sometimes I would even write letters to my future self that would say something like, "Dear future self, please tell me that all this hard work that I'm doing now, learning this skill, learning this material, is going to pay off. Tell me about what lies ahead in the light at the end of this tunnel." My future self would then become my pen pal. And that's a great way to turn your future self into someone real, the future you, who really is real. You have a future self. The question is, who is your future self? How is he living? How is he doing in life? If you don't have a relationship with your future self, if you don't deeply care about your future self, you won't be able to stay motivated to do the work, day in and day out. Okay, so step 1 is motivation. What's your motivation for wanting to learn this difficult skill or subject area? What will learning this new skill or subject matter allow me to accomplish? But now you might say, well, what about all those subjects they have me learning in school, like math, like algebra, calculus? I don't want to be a mathematician. I want to be an artist or a writer. My answer to this is, why do you go to the gym to lift weights and work on the exercise equipment? After all, you aren't lifting weights and running on exercise equipment throughout your regular day. You're going to the gym and using this equipment because it develops your body, makes you physically stronger, makes you look better, gives you more energy and endurance, makes you feel better. Well, learning math does this for your brain. It's like exercise for the brain. By learning and practicing math problems, you are forcing your brain into thinking in a different way than you are used to thinking. You are actually building brand new neural pathways called dendrites in your brain that make you smarter. There are many studies that show that people who have good to excellent math skills are better at solving problems, recognize patterns more quickly, and just function much better in life. People who have good math skills are less likely to default on their mortgage, less likely to run up big credit card debts, less likely to go bankrupt, less likely to have tax problems and get in trouble with the IRS. People who have good math skills just tend to be more logical and precise in their thought process. So even if you have no plans to use your math skills in your career, maybe you plan to be an artist or a dancer, there are still plenty of good reasons to become good at math. Just like there are many good reasons to go to the gym and work out 3 or 5 days a week, even if you have no plans to become a professional athlete. But the odds are, especially in this age where technology is becoming so dominant, that you will need your math skills. If you want to become involved in technology or engineering at any kind of high level, you will need math. After all, much software programming is used to solve mathematical problems. GPS systems, self-driving cars, air travel, space travel, skyscraper design, all architecture, all this requires math. We could not have a modern technological civilization without math. Without math, we would all be living in mud huts. Okay, so now let me just say a few words about advice that I'm sure you've all heard, to just follow your passion. And I've said this sometimes too, but I think this advice can be misunderstood. Yes, it's certainly much easier to learn material that you're interested in and are fascinated by. But when you are struggling through your algebra or your calculus problems, it can become pretty tough to be passionate about that. It's often very hard work and frankly, no fun at all. But we also tend to develop a passion for skills and subject areas that we master. It takes a gymnast thousands of hours of practice to be able to land a backflip on a balance beam consistently. The day in and day out practice and often drudgery, replete with injuries and broken bones, is no fun. The passion is the achievement of the skill. Climbing up Mount Everest is no fun. It's grueling. It's painful. But reaching the summit is exhilarating. That's where the passion comes from. It comes from the quest to master the skill or the mountain or whatever the discipline or challenge is, and then actually mastering it, becoming among the best in the world at it. Or continuing on the topic of motivation, let's say two people decide they want to become a doctor. And let's say the reason that one of them wants to become a doctor is his father was a doctor, so he wants to do what his father did, wants to continue this family tradition. Okay, that's one motivation, and it's not a bad motivation. But let's say the reason the other student wants to become a doctor is because she comes from a third world country. And let's say her parents and a number of her siblings and relatives died from cholera or some disease because there was almost no medicine or health care in that village where she's from. So she's decided she wants to become a doctor so she can go back to her village to help them have medicine and good health care. Which of these two people do you think has the stronger motivation to become a great doctor? The strength of your motive in undertaking a challenge is really the key factor in determining whether or not you'll be successful. It's not your intelligence, not your IQ score, not your natural talent so much. It's the strength of your motivation. It's the strength of the why have you decided to take on this mission, this quest, this challenge. So yes, it's your passion, but it's a mission that has become your passion because of the motivation behind it. Passions are often fleeting. Motives are much more concrete and specific, and therefore strong and long-lasting. If the motive is really strong, you need a strong motive, a strong reason for why you are undertaking something difficult. Okay, so if you're going to learn anything difficult or substantial, you need a strong motivation to learn it. And developing this relationship with my future self, really caring about my future self, seeing my future self as a real person out there, actually me, has always helped keep me motivated to do the work day in and day out, to continue the grind. My goal is always to become a better version of me. I also want to leave something of lasting value behind when I'm gone. That's why I write. That's why I create these videos and podcasts. My hope is for these podcasts to help young people achieve their goals and live fulfilling lives generations from now. Okay, step 2 is deciding what you will learn. What skill or discipline will you master? Now, obviously, when you are in school, some of these decisions are made for you. There are general education requirements you need to graduate. Math skills, reading skills, writing skills, science, history, geography. These are just the base building blocks of knowledge you need to become a functioning person in society. What the schools teach you through high school is the bare minimum of what you must learn, and they don't even do such a good job at that. But at some point, you will need to focus on developing a specific skill or set of skills at a high level. You will need to become a specialist at something, or perhaps several things. I used the example of becoming a software coder earlier, but these rules apply to any kind of learning, whether you're making a decision to go into technology, medicine, law, engineering, or learn a new language, or learn how to play an instrument. Whatever skill or subject area you choose to learn, it has to be a serious commitment. If you just half-ass it, you won't learn it. You certainly won't learn anything of much value that will serve as a marketable skill later. So step 2 of learning anything important is to make a decision to learn it. You can't learn everything. You only have a certain amount of time on this planet. You must pick and choose what to learn. You must choose a direction to go in. And you must have that end result in mind for why you are choosing to learn this skill or subject area. What will learning this help you achieve? What will your future self look like and feel like if you learn this skill or subject? So this also ties into motivation. When you make a decision to learn something, that word is also related to the word incision, which means cut. Your decision to learn one thing means you are cutting off the possibility of learning other things, at least while you are focused on learning this difficult subject or skill. If you decide you want to become a doctor, you are cutting off the possibility of also becoming a lawyer, at least for the foreseeable future. If you decide you want to learn Spanish, you've decided not to learn French, at least for now, until you become competent at Spanish. If you don't really commit to learning the skill or subject area for a period of time, and if instead you hop around from one subject to another, one discipline to another, you really never become good at anything. You are then just a dabbler. The reason most people never really become an expert at anything is they are indecisive. They never really commit to it. They never say, this is the road I'm heading down, not this road, and not any of these other roads either. When I make a decision to learn a difficult new subject or skill, I have a 30-hour rule. I commit to devoting at least 30 hours of time to learn it, or begin learning it. And if I spend 1 hour a day on this new skill, that means 1 month of learning. That's enough time to learn quite a lot about almost anything. You could become pretty competent in learning a new language if you really spent 1 hour of focused time on it per day for 30 days. The other reason the 30-hour commitment works so well for me is the first 10 hours of learning anything difficult is the toughest. If you want to learn how to salsa dance, for example, the first 10 hours won't be much fun at all. You'll be stumbling around, and you'll be tempted to quit. But you can become a darn good salsa dancer if you make a 30-hour commitment to learn it, 1 hour a day for 30 days. And then that's a skill you will have for the rest of your life. You'll be able to go to Latino nightclubs and probably be one of the best salsa dancers on the floor for the rest of your life. You'll be the star of the dance floor in any nightclub. So that's not a bad skill to have for a 30-hour learning commitment. Same with learning a musical instrument. This is why I believe in tackling learning a subject or skill one at a time. The way education is set up in this country, I believe, is all wrong, with students taking 5 classes in a semester, each class often in an entirely different subject area. The human mind cannot hold on to 5 different subject areas at once. It would be far better to take 1 class at a time for 30 days. So you could just focus on that. Then after 30 days are up, take another class, perhaps in a different subject area, or perhaps a more advanced class in the same subject area. But focus for 30 days on one subject. You can't learn software coding, Shakespeare, French, calculus, biology, and tap dancing at the same time. At least I can't. My mind doesn't work that way. My mind works best when it's completely focused on learning one thing at a time. I think everyone's brain works best this way. And by the way, I don't really believe there's any such thing as multitasking. Your mind can only focus on one thing at a time, one task at a time. You might think you are multitasking when you're talking on the phone, cooking, watching the baby, and doing the New York Times crossword puzzle all at the same time, but you really aren't. Your mind and your focus are just moving quickly from one task to another, and then back to another task. It might look like your computer is doing many tasks at once. You might have many windows open. But your computer processor is really only doing one task at a time. Your mind is just like that, moving between tasks very quickly. And you'll find that if you close out your windows on your computer and clear all the material off your desktop, your computer will hum along much faster. Well, your brain works the same way. You're much better off focusing on one task at a time and blocking everything else out. You can become pretty good at almost anything in 30 days of daily focused attention on learning it. At least good enough to know whether you want to keep learning more and getting better at this skill. You could learn to ski in 30 days, how to play the piano or guitar, speak a new language, become a pretty decent artist, how to salsa dance, become a chef, build a website, or take apart and rebuild a car engine. You just have to decide what you really want to learn right now and then make at least a 30-day daily commitment to learn it. Pick one skill at a time to learn. Then move on to the next skill you want to learn. Then once you find what you really love doing, keep doing it. Keep building on that so that you become an expert, so that you become world class. In the long run, you will want to specialize in something. Really become world class at some skill. Hopefully something that people will pay you well to do. Specialists tend to make a lot more money than generalists. A brain surgeon makes more money than a general practitioner. A lawyer who specializes in patent law or telecom law or forensics can usually make a lot more money than a general practice lawyer. A software coder who is a true expert on cybersecurity will make a lot more money than someone who just knows HTML coding for building basic websites. So at some point you will want to move on from becoming just a dabbler and generalist to really specialize in something, to become truly world class at something. Okay, so how does this learning actually happen? What is the fastest, surest way to learn any subject, skill, or discipline? Well, the answer is repetition. Repetition is the mother of all learning. Another word for this is practice. If you are really to learn the piano, you can't just show up at lessons and not practice. You can't just say, I played that song once, that's good enough, or I did that assignment. You have to practice the song and your scales over and over again until you've mastered them. And of course you can't ever really master a musical instrument any more than you can master a ballet. It can always be done better. The same with your math homework. If you don't practice the math problems and really learn and internalize the method of solving a particular kind of problem, you won't learn the skill. The more you practice a math operation and the more math problems you do, the better you will get at it. Then when you've mastered the math operation, you'll be ready to go on to the next step in your learning. Move on to learn a new operation and take on more complex math problems. What's happening when you are practicing the song over and over again on the piano or solving 100 math problems using the same operation is you are creating new neural pathways in your brain. As you practice, these neural pathways become deeper and deeper, well-worn paths, to a point where playing the song or solving these math problems becomes second nature. You almost don't even have to think about them anymore. This particular skill becomes so internalized. This is why cramming the night before for tests never works. It takes time to really learn a new concept, skill, or anything at all difficult. It takes that constant repetition to create those well-worn neural pathways in your brain. And this can't happen in one day. It has to happen over a period of time. You and your brain need rest. And this is very important. The research now shows that most learning actually takes place during the rest phase, when you're sleeping or just resting. So when I say repetition is the mother of all learning, I should amend this to say spaced repetition is the mother of all learning. Your brain needs to rest to really absorb and internalize the material. Your brain has two modes of thinking. The focus mode, which involves the frontal cortex of the brain, and then there's the diffuse mode of thinking. This is when the brain is in a state of rest and relaxation. Scientists believe there are something like 28 different states of diffuse mode thought, which can involve sleeping, just taking a walk, meditating, relaxing on the beach, or just daydreaming. We don't really need to get into all this. We'll just call all of this the diffuse mode of thinking. This is when your brain is just wandering on its own. You are resting, relaxing, daydreaming. You aren't directing your brain anywhere. In focus mode, you are directing your brain intensely on the problem or subject material, your practice or task at hand. As far as scientists can tell, the brain cannot be in both focus mode and diffuse mode of thought at the same time. Your brain is in one mode or the other, but most of the learning actually takes place when the brain is in diffuse mode, when your brain is resting. You are asleep, dreaming, or perhaps you are half awake on the sofa, or you're in the shower, or you're going on a walk. Your brain has just finished all this hard work. Now you're off the task, and your brain is resting, just wandering around on its own, no longer being directed by your frontal cortex. But research shows that it's during this diffuse mode of thought that the new neural pathways are being formed. These neural pathways are not being formed during the focus mode while you're doing the hard work. The hard work you are doing in focus mode is what stimulates the growth of these new neural pathways in your brain, but they need time to actually form and grow. It's just like with exercise. The muscle is not actually being built while lifting weights. Your muscle fibers are actually being torn down during the weightlifting. The hard work of the weightlifting is stimulating the muscle, shocking the muscle fibers, actually tearing them slightly and weakening them in the short term. The new muscle then forms after the exercise during the rest period. Your muscles need time to recover and build during the rest period before you can go back to lifting weights again. Well, the same with your learning. Your brain needs time to grow and form the new neural pathways in response to the heavy stimulation of focus mode thought, focus mode work of study and practice. And the basis of much of this talk comes from a terrific book that I read recently titled A Mind for Numbers by a mathematics and engineering professor from Oakland University named Barbara Oakley. So if you want to delve more deeply into this topic, I highly recommend her excellent book, also her other books. But here's another reason why getting enough sleep is so important to your learning and mental health. When you're awake, metabolites accumulate on your brain between the cells. These metabolites are toxins, actual poisons. They build up on your brain cells while you're awake. They affect your judgment and prevent you from thinking clearly. You get groggy. When you go to sleep, your brain cells shrink in size, which creates space between the cells for fluids to wash between the cells of your brain and clean away all those metabolites, all those toxins, so that your brain is clean again. That's why when you wake up, you feel so refreshed. Not just physically, but mentally. Your body actually probably only needs about 4 hours of sleep, but your brain needs 7 to 8 hours of good sleep. People with poor sleep habits tend to develop brain malfunctions. Mental illnesses are more prone to getting Alzheimer's and dementia as they get older. Scientists have charted the fact that it's during sleep when the neurosynaptic growth happens, when those dendrites, those synaptic connections and neural pathways in your brain are formed. Again, this is why cramming for tests the night before never works. You want short learning periods. Learn, rest, sleep, learn, rest, sleep. It's during rest and sleep that neuroscaffold is being built in your brain. And I'm sure you've seen this work out exactly this way many times in your own life. Let's say you've really been struggling with something. It might be a piano piece or a difficult move in gymnastics or figure skating, or you're trying to learn a new math operation. And it becomes very frustrating because you're just not getting it. So then you put it aside, you go to bed, you wake up the next day, and you feel refreshed. And suddenly you're playing the piano piece much better. Or you're learning that gymnastics move. Or you're suddenly seeing how that math operation works. It's almost easy now. Well, what's happened is, while you were sleeping, those dendrites and neural pathways were growing. All those new neurosynapses were connecting and neuroscaffolding was being built. You were literally getting smarter while you were sleeping. Also, all those metabolites, those poisons, those toxins that built up while you were awake were being washed out of your brain. So your brain was free to think clearly again.
Like the pine trees lining the winding road, I've got a name, I've got a name.